What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Bronx Pinstripes Show. Welcome to baseball season. Officially, the Super Bowl's over. Spring training, pitchers and catchers is starting today, Valentine's Day. I guess happy Valentine's Day to you 3 months. How you doing,
Yeah.
Scott?
Yeah. Happy Valentine's Day. Do you celebrate Valentine's Day anymore?
What do you mean celebrate?
Acknowledge it.
Yeah, I said happy Valentine's Day to my wife.
Did you get a card or a gift?
Nope.
Does she do the same to you? Do you guys have an understanding that, like, you know what, this is one of those ones that's no longer.
She got me a pair of ski socks.
Oh, well, that's nice. Those are not cheap. Those are
The problem is, here's the problem.
Practical.
Harrison's birthday was this past weekend. And
Yeah.
so we had all my family in town. We had all Leanne's family over. It was a chaotic weekend. Tuesday in New Jersey was a snow day. Daycare was
Yes.
closed. Everything was closed. We got a lot of snow. I would have tried to go out and buy some flowers or get a card yesterday.
It's yesterday, the day before. You can't say that. You can't say that.
But that was the day that I had earmarked a week ago on when I'm going to get this stuff done.
Well, that's
that
your problem.
didn't happen.
You can't earmark the day before and be like,
Well,
oh, you know what? Nothing
that's what I
wrong
did.
is going to happen. There's
I've
nothing
got-
that's going to deter me from doing it on the day before. If you truly were going to do something, you would have already done it.
You know, that's fair enough. It's also with my wife, we got Christmas, obviously. Then her birthday's 2 weeks after Christmas.
Yeah.
And then it's like Valentine's Day's the next month. There's too many things
Look,
all
I gotta
in the
tell
first
you-
6 weeks of the year.
I'll tell you my thoughts on it. First of all, Valentine's Day is for the unmarried. That's what it's for. Bottom
Fair.
line. It's for the unmarried. If you get married and you're still really like acknowledging and putting Valentine's Day, and call me the opposite of a romantic, but frankly, Bevan feels the same way. It's a dumb holiday. It's a manufactured dumb holiday that has put men out for years and years and years and years and years, and has made women feel terrible and guilty if there's not a significant other on a particular day. It's a bad holiday for everybody, unless you are, in that phase of boyfriend, girlfriend, where it's new and you're like, you're all very happy and spontaneous and all that stuff. And frankly, there's just not many people who listen to our podcast that are probably in that demographic at this point.
I was going to say the 3 women listeners right now are not happy with you.
And but it's true. I mean, it does. It makes people feel uncomfortable, I think, if you're not, or you have to go out and celebrate the fact that you're, anti Valentine's Day. It's just a holiday that doesn't need to exist. And if we're talking about if you're in love and if you're happy, you should profess that love on a more than once a year. And it happens, like you said, on holidays. It happens on different opportunities for you to show your feelings. It doesn't have to be on Valentine's Day. I will say though, like my mom growing up, I always had this like red wire basket in the shape of a heart. Every single Valentine's Day, we would get that, like a bunch of Hershey Kisses in that thing. And I looked forward to that. So, and Kemp has Valentine's Day for school, and he has like Star Wars Valentines with like little glow stick lightsabers, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And you just give them to everybody. So
yeah, everyone gets
that's
a
cool.
Valentine's
And I make
Day
him
at
feel
school.
really uncomfortable by asking him if there was only one, who would you give it to? And now we're at the point where, and dude, you're getting close to this because I didn't think it was going to happen to him, but it is. Bruh, yo. It's like every other word out of when they're together, the boys, bruh.
Wait,
wild.
hold on. I didn't know what he's saying, bruh?
Yes.
No.
And he said it to me the other day. I was like, Kemp, nah, I am not your bruh. You're not calling me bruh. Don't do it. Yeah,
Wow.
it's happening. And when they're all together, it's like, yo, bruh. It's wild. 6.
Yep. The Valentine's Day for the entire class. That's why Leanne was taking Harrison to daycare this morning. It's because she got little car Valentines for his entire 19 kid class.
Nice.
Anyway,
19's a lot.
I don't think. Yeah, it's chaos. I pick them up. It's just 19 3-year-olds running around. It is absolute chaos.
That's my nightmare.
How was the Super Bowl?
19.
How was Vegas? Did
Vegas
you
was cool, man. Vegas, it was long. I was there from Monday through Saturday, which is entirely too long to be at Vegas. Granted, I was doing a lot of work, but there was definitely some extracurriculars that you get mixed in there because for Super Bowl, there's a lot of parties, and it's in Vegas. I gotta say, Vegas turned out, man. They did a really good job. It felt together as much as
I've heard people say it should just rotate between New Orleans and Vegas from now on.
New Orleans is next year.
Is.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, it was all up and down the strip. Everything was kind of contained in there, and because of the way Vegas is constructed, there are roads around the strip so you can get to places. I thought that was going to be a bigger problem, but it really wasn't. The traffic in the middle of it obviously is a disaster, but if you start going around it, it wasn't as bad, especially early in the mornings and later in the evenings. But yeah, we were at the media center on Radio Row and just had a great time and turned out we had a lot of really fun guests and it was cool. It was a good week. And then the
Yeah,
game itself
I
was kind of a dud in the first half, I'd say, and then the second half picked it up.
Yeah, it was a
Little
good
sloppy in
it
the
was a
first
good
half.
enough game for a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It was an overall enjoyable watch. All right, that's enough bullshit. Let's talk some Yankees now. Last week when you were out, we had Andy Martino on. It was a really great interview. I thought a lot of good insights and a lot of good comments and feedback from people. So I appreciate the support there. He said a few interesting things. One thing I noticed, people were like, "Why Andy Martino is just defending Brian Cashman?" And I didn't take it as him defending Brian Cashman at all. He wrote a book about the inner workings of the Yankees. Cashman's probably definitely going to be the centerpiece of that. So he talked to so many people in the organization, including Brian Cashman himself. He's not defending him. He's just telling us how it is from what he's learned. And I just think a lot of people didn't like that. One of the things that I saw the biggest negative feedback on, and I want to get your take on this, Scott, is that Martino said Brian Cashman makes every move in a vacuum. He's never thinking about the big picture. He's looking at, for example, the Juan Soto trade or the signing of a relief pitcher or the signing of a big free agent, all in a vacuum. Is that the right decision for the team? Is that good or bad for the organization? And then he moves on to the next thing. And while I said that's probably makes sense from a long-term organizational perspective, because you don't want to ever get yourself in a situation where you make a move because you made a move prior to that didn't work out, so you're like doubling down on things. As a general manager of a team, there has to be go for it moments and go for it seasons or pull back seasons. And so you make moves based on those decisions, and those moves can inform other moves. For example, when he traded away players at the 2016 trade deadline, those moves happened because they made a decision. We need to rebuild, retool a little bit. And so he made multiple moves with that in mind. Or in the 2008, 2009 offseason, when he signed all of those free agents, he made moves based on this is our opportunity to add a bunch of missing pieces to this roster to, quote, go for it this coming year. So the fact that I think rubbed people the wrong way, and I know it rubbed me the wrong way because I called this offseason like you have to push all your chips into the middle of the table if you're trading for Juan Soto. Like, don't go into the season with question marks in the rotation or the pitching depth or question marks in the infield or anything like that. Like you should try and clean up as many question marks as you possibly can. And so I think that annoyed some people, that they think Brian Cashman isn't looking at the big picture of things.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people also agree with that, to be honest. But if you go back, if you're in that mindset and you're thinking of that, who's the number one acquisition that you think of is Stanton. I would assume like that puts you in a position now with a a log jam in a particular position, but you're being opportunistic about a guy, not looking at like what's the rest of that plan. And to his point, I don't know if I would position it as he does look at everything in a vacuum, because like Soto, you got to be opportunistic when you're have the availability to be opportunistic. And you could say that, some of these vacuum type moves are reactions to what they did poorly or planned poorly. So I think it's just poor planning in a lot of cases rather than moves in a vacuum. I think moves in a vacuum are reactions to poor planning because you have to kind of pivot from whatever your strategy and plan was that wasn't working. So I don't know if I necessarily buy the comment where he was in a vacuum, but I mean, I understand what he's saying. The sentiment, I think, is real to a point, because when Stanton signed, that's what everybody points back to. Like that's when you're looking at roster construction and how they moved forward with a lot of things. it starts with Stanton, coming onto this team, and the fact that they didn't go and sign certain people that may have been better fits for what they wanted to accomplish in the years forward. So they didn't execute said plan, whatever it was on then. And then you have these isolated moves where you're trying to like catch up and be competitive. And this year, of course, they had to do it. They had to do something this year. So they were opportunistic with what was in front of them. And Juan Soto clearly was the number one piece there. But to his point, to Cashman's credit, he's a good fit. He's a good fit for what they need. So offense has been an issue dating back to, the playoff exits. Like offense was the reason why they have gone out. So I understand what he's saying, but
the context of it was you trade for Stanton, you trade for Soto, but you only Yamamoto was your number one offseason free agent target, and that didn't work out. So instead, you pivot to Marcus Stroman, who took a lesser deal and lesser money. Instead of adding another piece to the rotation, either another big free agent or a trade for Corbin Burns, something like that, giving up prospects, Cashman has decided, at least to this point in spring training, in the spring, that does not make sense for the organization. Don't want to commit the financial resources to something like Snell, or don't want to commit the prospect capital to someone like Corbin Burns. And my point was, well, they're
different players. You can't say that they're the same, though. Yamamoto.
No, I'm not calling them the same. The point, though, is that Brian Cashman is not looking at the offseason as a go for it offseason. So since we have to go for it, we have to make this trade, and we have to trade, say, Spencer Jones and a handful of other players for Corbin Burns. Because what he's looking at is, I already made the Soto trade, made the Verdugo trade. We upgraded our outfield. We brought in Stroman to shore up the rotation. That's not going to impact one way or the other what else we do in the starting rotation in trading for Corbin Burns. And to me, I was like, that I don't see how that could be possible. Of course they're related. Of course you have to look at off seasons based on moves you've already made or tried to make to then make your next move. And so I'm sure Brian Cashman likes to say they don't do that, but I feel like that's human nature, right? Like of course other things are going to influence your decision in future moves.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the Corbin Burns move is one that, I know you had it in your plans. I've been an advocate of it ever since they lost to Yamamoto, and understanding that they do have expiring contracts. It makes a lot of sense to go and do it. And now you have a really big problem in the AL East because Burns is on the best team in the AL East at this point. So yes, they have to be influenced with with what's happening in the market and what's happening on their roster. But I don't know. I think that the moves, it's hard to say that's in a vacuum, because I don't believe that's in a vacuum. I think there were a lot of contributing factors to what he did. And to me, when I'm thinking about someone making a decision in a vacuum, they're not thinking about anything else. It's just that isolated thing. And you can do that with particular players. Yamamoto's a different type of player, a very different type of player than anybody else who's on the market. You can't say that because they didn't go after Yamamoto and Snell is still there, then they should just do Snell for a longer term deal. They're different players. Like you cannot say that 10 years of one guy and 5 years of another guy, for that first 5 years is going to be a similar result. They're not the same. So that part I disagree with.
Yeah, that's why I conceded. I think it's probably a good thing for the long-term success of the organization and long-term sustainable success of the organization, which, despite the fact that fans are not happy with the Yankees, that they have not won a World Series or even gone to the World Series since 2009, they have been a successful organization in that time period from just a win-loss standpoint and a playoff appearance standpoint. And unfortunately, management probably views the playoffs. We know they definitely view the playoffs as a little bit of a luck and crapshoot. And so their job is to get the team there. And then if the balls bounce the right way, then we're going to win a championship. If the balls bounce the wrong way, they're not going to win a championship. I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole on that. I think that's bullshit, considering you have teams who have more success than others because of the way their teams are constructed and the players they have, but whatever. To your point about Corbin Burns with the Orioles now a problem. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the sportsbook win totals and how the Yankees were 93 wins or 92.5 wins, and which was 4.5 or 5 games better than than Baltimore. Zip's projections came out after the Corbin Burns, or were updated after the Corbin Burns trade. And they have Baltimore at 90 wins, the Yankees and Toronto at 88 wins, Tampa at 83 wins, which on the face of it feels a little low, and Boston at 79 wins, which I think feels a little high based on how their offseason and their roster is looking. But the Zips projections views Baltimore as the best team in the league. And I think it's, Corbin Burns is obviously a big factor of that. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, and it's for sure that's more in line, I think, with what we were thinking as far
Agreed.
as the way that it's going to be a lot tighter. The swing that was there between 94 and 86 or 87 was just too big. And yeah, I mean, Corbin Burns is a convenient way to make those closer, but they were under. I think it was under in the from the jump. But yeah, Corbin Burns makes a massive difference right now. Makes a massive difference to that team. So, the fact that the Yankees, and then here's the other thing. Like, I kind of wish Cashman made more decisions in a vacuum for this year, because this is the year to do that. You need to just add pieces to add depth.
Well, that's not a
make the
vacuum.
team
That's
better.
what we're saying. A vacuum is, I'm only looking at this deal. What you're saying and what I was saying and I wish also happened is, no, this is our year. We just have Soto. Might be the last year, might be the only year of Soto, depending on how the offseason goes. Let's do everything in our power to possibly win this year. Also, the
but
Judge
you could
and
also
Cole
add
prime
pieces that
windows
don't make
are
a lot of
closing.
sense. I guess I'm thinking at it as you can add a piece today that makes you better, but doesn't make a ton of sense for the long term. Which, if you're looking at a vacuum, it's more for just a year, not the necessarily.
Yeah,
the strategy.
I'm not suggesting spend stupid money on Blake Snell, right? Like, I'm not saying, oh, just sign Blake Snell to 9 years just because you need him for this year. No. But what I'm saying is be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more willing to make sacrifices in the short term to win a championship now. Because
we've been consistent with this. With this, this is the year that they have the opportunity to create depth in the starting rotation, which is a difficult thing to do in the first place. And they
Right.
do have the opportunity this year to do that, with Clark Schmidt being, that fifth swing guy, and I think a little bit of uncertainty in the bullpen. They do have the opportunity, or they had the opportunity, and they still do, because there are still good pitchers on the market to create that depth and overload the starting rotation, which I still think they should do.
We've got Boone's press conference Wednesday afternoon. We're recording this Wednesday morning. I don't think anything's going to be said in that press conference. It's going to be more of the same from Aaron Boone. Brian Cashman, I believe, will speak to the media on Thursday. Do you think we're going to get anything interesting from that?
I mean, no, nothing. He's been more candid, but I don't know what more there is to say about the going into the season beyond. Like, I want to know more about what's available on the market and if there's any thoughts there, but they're not going to divulge any of that.
Another thing that I think you'll find interesting from that Martino interview, there was I guess probably among beat writers at that GM meetings, because Martino was in that group that was interviewing Cashman. I guess there was a conspiracy theory among those beat writers that another reason why Cashman was so outward, emotional, and defensive is to deflect from Hal Steinbrenner, who talked on Zoom a few hours earlier and frankly sounded like a buffoon on Zoom, talking about Aaron Judge thinks we need to bunt.
Yeah, I think that is 100% true. I thought that and I think also you're getting Boone talking about things. You're getting Judge being vocal about how the team is being constructed, or like decisions being made behind the scenes. I think a lot of that stuff, and Hal talking, I think a lot of that stuff kind of pissed Cashman off. So I think he was agitated.
He was definitely agitated. All right, a couple of news items. So we've got Max Goodman coming up on the show. We're going to talk to him about a ton of spring training news items, and he's going to join our podcast every week during spring training. So I'm very excited about that. But first, I want to talk about Carlos Rodon shaving the mustache. And
the man listens, finally.
I think this is a step in the right direction for Carlos Rodon.
It is.
It might sound stupid, but I really do believe this.
Stupid. It's not stupid.
It's having some self-awareness on how dumb you looked, and
when you look in when you look in the mirror and you think everything's okay, when you see the mustache and then the performance with that mustache, then that's what's not okay. That's what's not okay. So he did the right thing. He got rid of the growth that was above his lip, and he's acknowledging the fact that it was everything was bad, and it starts with the mustache. So we're going to get rid of it, and going to get, if there's some bad juju, which there was in the mustache, it's now gone. You gotta clean off the upper lip and start with a new fresh face going into spring training. And the guy's been there early, saying all the right things, so we'll see. I'm not
That's
going
what
to
we
get
said
excited
last
about
year.
his outward talking anymore, because I did that too early. Or talked
Well,
myself
that's
into
what
it.
we said last year when he showed up with the mustache. It's like, if you want to grow a mustache after your 12th start of the year and you have a 2.8 ERA, I'm all for it. You can't do it before you even throw a pitch on a regular season game for the Yankees. But Rodon has been in Tampa since early January. He's been working on his throwing program. He talked to the media recently, said mainly just got to get back to what I was in 21, 22. I believe I can do that. That's why I'm here so early. Blah blah blah. All of that kind of stuff. Again, I like you said, let's not get overly excited about Rodon and how he's talking, because that didn't work out last year. It's really going to be, has he actually learned from the mistakes that he made last year? I'm not talking pitching wise. I'm talking more just emotions wise.
I want him
With
to learn from
the
the pitching mistakes. I just want him to learn from the pitching mistakes, because if he
well,
learns from the pitching
obviously,
mistakes, all the other things are going to take care of itself. I don't care what he does emotionally. If he's pitching well, fix the pitching shit.
yeah. But
That's it.
he when he blew off Matt Blake at the end of the season, that's not.
I don't
I
even
mean, you
care.
can't.
If you're pitching well, I could give a rat's ass what you do. I really don't care. Just pitch well, because the rest of the shit will take care of itself. When you're making that much money coming into New York and you have that mustache and you're not pitching well, bad. It's bad. Bad stuff is going to happen. Bad reactions are going to happen. Your body language is going to be bad. And especially if you're a guy that wears emotions on your sleeve, not going to be a good thing. So, just fix the one thing that anybody cares about, and that's pitching. Just pitch well. If you pitch well, you could be the biggest asshole in the world. Just pitch well. That's it. That's all we ask.
After the end of the season last year, didn't he say like, "Oh, I'm going to go on a beach vacation without my family and just be in like solitary confinement"?
It was solitary confinement. Yeah, he's gonna take some time away from everybody and just figure it out. And maybe that's where the mustache. He's like, you know what, this thing's fucked up.
Maybe when
saw
he was
demons
by himself
in the mirror. I had a buddy in college one day who just like came out and said he saw demons. I'm like, all right, then you got to do what you got to do, I guess.
He was sober and saw demons, or he was inebriated and saw demons.
One way or another. He was in some kind of state, but he saw demons and it changed his life. So,
and he's a model citizen now.
Oh yeah, he's definitely the model citizen. It worked out perfectly. It worked out a lot of earrings left. The earrings left though. That's good.
Your buddy, his earrings?
Yeah, the earrings left the building. There were a lot of earrings no longer, and they have stayed away.
that's like equivalent of a mustache shave.
Yeah.
Rodon also lost some weight and seems to be in much better shape. And I don't want to say he was out of shape last year, but he was definitely on the bigger side, I think.
He just comes across as one of those guys that can carry that though and be okay with that. I'm not, and maybe not. Maybe it affected his.
Well, he had all those back. He had back problems, and so
yeah.
Weight can be a fact. David Wells had back problems, and I'm not saying Carlos Rodon is overweight like David Wells was overweight, but especially as Wells got later in his career, his gut did not help his back problems.
Usually your gut doesn't help back problems if you have back problems. Usually it's the center. Gravity doesn't help the gravity issues don't help your back. And normally that's, it can get, nor does, drinking every single day and having gout and all those things. So there's a lot of different,
he did have gout.
There's a lot of different factors in why your back hurts, I think. So for Rodon, if he's in better shape and that allows him to throw his two pitches in a much better fashion, then I'm all for it.
I think Wells wrote a book called like Backaches and Beers or something like that. Or like Backaches, Toe Aches and Beers or something like that. Never read the book. I'm sure it's a hoot.
Anytime you have gout, you got to question some lifestyle moves. I feel like that's one of those issues where you're like, you know what, something's
got to make some changes.
Not right. Something's not right.
The Yankees also claimed infielder Jordan Groshans from Miami and DFA'd Matt Crook. Matt Crook was, potential slot in the bullpen. We're going to talk to Max Goodman in a few minutes about,
They have
spring
19
training
left-handed
battles.
pitchers from the bullpen that can
Spring training
potentially
battles, but just how it doesn't seem like there's any spring training battles. And so adding an infield depth in this move. And they also, they've made a lot of these moves over the past couple of weeks, just like picking up guys off waivers, DFAing guys. Seems to happen every 4 or 5 days. All right, anything else you want to touch on before we talk to Max?
Oh, let's bring on Max.
All right, well, before we do that, I need to tell you, you need to hear about delicious 2-minute meals. I'm talking restaurant quality food that is delivered to you weekly and takes only 2 minutes to heat up. That's Factor, the best ready to eat meal service out there. Sometimes figuring out what you're going to eat for dinner can be stressful because you have no time to grocery shop, cook, or you don't want to wait for delivery to show up. Factor solves all of that. The process is very easy. You go on their website, you choose from over 35 delicious meals each week. Highly skilled chefs prepare the meals. The food gets delivered to you. It's always fresh and never frozen. You store it in your refrigerator, and then when you're ready to eat it, boom, you pop it in the microwave for 2 minutes, and you are ready to eat delicious food. Factor is affordable. It's less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. Factor can also fit to your schedule. You can customize the number of meals you get each week or pause your subscription if you're going to be out of town. There's no prep, no mess, just delicious food. Head to factormeals.com/Bronx50 and use code Bronx50 to get 50% off, half off your order at factormeals.com/BRONX50. What does that spell, Scott?
Factor
listening.
Bronx 50.
Factormeals.com/Bronx50. You nailed it. Let's talk to Max. Okay, joining us on the podcast now is Max Goodman, covers the Yankees for New Jersey, Advanced Media, NJ.com, and the Star Ledger. Max, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Hope you're all doing well.
So we know you're going to be down in Tampa starting for the whole month of March. So we'll be able to get your take on things from the ground level once you're there. But right now, you're stuck in the Northeast for the next couple of weeks. Want to get your opinion on the offseason and the moves that the Yankees have made so far, and pitchers and catchers reporting this week. Do you think that the offseason is complete?
I think if I had to give them a grade, it would be between a B+ and an A-. I think you can't ignore just how much better this roster is, but it does feel just a little incomplete when you look at the pitching staff. They obviously did a couple opportunistic moves to improve the bullpen, and I think you can trust Matt Blake and company to bring the best out of the relievers that they have, the guys they brought in, some of the young folks that are unproven right now, but the depth in the rotation, when you consider the injury concerns dating back to last year with Rodon, Cortez, and now Stroman as well, that group with Garrett Cole has immense upside, top 5 rotation in the league upside, but the floor is pretty darn low. And I think those guys have to prove, everyone except Cole, they have to prove that they're able to play a full season, that they're able to be effective consistently, take the ball every 5 days and get the job done. So who's going to step in when inevitably someone gets hurt in that staff? And Clark Schmidt being the number 5, how's he going to handle his first year after the biggest workload of his big league career as well? So is it going to be a Luke Weaver as your number 6, or are prospects Will Warren, Clayton Beeter, maybe Chase Hampton going to fill that void? I think that one more veteran, reliable, and proven piece maybe would have eased the anxiety of the fan base a little bit there. But again, when you go one of the worst outfields in the league to now one of the best with Juan Soto and Alex Verdugo, I think Trent Grisham is a valuable piece for them. You're still relying a little bit on the veterans that showed some signs of decline last year in terms of the offense and the lineup. But on paper, I know the game's not played on paper, but on paper, this offense can be very, very good. The pitching staff too, but you got to stay healthy. Got to prove that last year was an anomaly for a lot of these guys.
Max, I'm glad you brought up and we're going to talk about some position battles. There aren't a ton of them this year, but I think something that you said is, we just got finished with the first part of this show, and this has been a consistent thread of our conversations through the offseason, is creating depth in the starting rotation. And normally that's a very difficult thing to do. It's, when you're trying to get major league talent on a roster where you only have 5 slots to fill, and you don't have the ability to add additional major league talent to a roster so that you can create that depth. The Yankees, though, I think are in a position of strength in that regard, with Clark Schmidt being their number 5. They do have the ability, I believe, this year, and they've had the ability to create that depth with another solid major league pitcher. And I'm not even saying, like, the fact that Luke Weaver is as a number 6, like, makes me cringe hearing that, because that is the inevitable thing. Like, someone will go down. And I feel like it's a missed opportunity. And I understand that there are still a couple guys out there that have the ability to change this narrative, but creating that depth in the starting rotation is such an important piece. And the Yankees have the ability, and they have to win this year. Everybody looks at that. There's expiring contracts across the board now, and this is the year that they're going in. They only have Juan Soto for 1 year guaranteed, right? We don't know what's going to happen. Create that depth. They have the opportunity to do it. And that is where I think you're right. I think the Yankee fans looking around, the uncertainty potentially in the starting pitching rotation, and frankly, like the bullpen, not a lot of big names out there, not a lot of proven guys that have shown career stats in doing it. And if you needed to use a Clark Schmidt in more of a swing man role, or an opportunity to create out of the bullpen by adding someone who has a proven track record in the starting rotation, I think you got to do it. So curious of your thoughts on that, because to me, that's the biggest glaring, issue with the roster right now.
Well, look, you brought something up that I think is going to be a storyline all year, and it's the fact that this roster has so many guys that are on the last year of their contracts. And obviously Soto is a rental, but Gleyber Torres, Clay Holmes, Jonathan Loaizaga, Verdugo, there's a significant portion and impact guys that may not be around next year. At least they're currently not under contract to be. Maybe it's misguided for me, but I'm not worried in terms of the Yankees being able to produce in the bullpen. They were so good in that way last year, best bullpen in the league, 3.34 ERA, and their pitching department has proven that they can bring the best out of all kinds of different arms, whether it's the Ian Hamiltons of the world. I think there will be some non-roster guy that erupts on the scene this spring and ends up having an impact, 30 games, sub-4, sub-3 ERA. I think that's a guarantee almost, which is kind of crazy to say.
Cashman's biggest strength at this point, right? It's
Cashman,
to date, it's his biggest strength.
Victor Gonzalez and Caleb Ferguson might end up being really good, and Yankees fans might not miss Wandy Peralta at all. But I agree with you. I think that they did have an all-in mentality. They had a huge offer on the table for Yamamoto. They traded a huge portion of their pitching talent in the farm system to get Soto, as well as Michael King, obviously. And they traded some arms for Verdugo as well. So it's not like they didn't try to get the job done in terms of going all in, right? But like I said in my first answer, I think there is just a little bit of a hole that they could have addressed, but maybe it just comes down to they really trust those young guys that haven't had an opportunity yet, whether it's Yoendris Gomez or Luis Gil, those types of guys in that next tier, as much as Weaver is the number 6 as of now. That could change, when Boone and Cashman speak on Wednesday and Thursday this week, and who knows who's hurt, who knows who other guys they've brought in that have a locker that we don't know about yet. And the farm system continues to replenish and churn out quality arms. So clearly they trust that talent. They trust the department to bring the best out of those guys. And also, I think the budget was a concern too. I mean, their payroll is already estimated.
These fans don't like hearing that.
I know, but the luxury tax, and it's got to be a part of the conversation that it's already a high number. They've got Soto for whatever it is, over $30 million for this year. A lot of big contracts that they're committed to. So these are maybe just the repercussions of other decisions in past years.
But like you said, there's a big reset button coming next year too, as far as contracts as well. So if you're going to go. Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
I want to respond to a couple of things you said, because I think they all tie together. I agree with you. The bullpen, like even though there's question marks in the bullpen, it seems to always work out for them, and they always get production. You said they were the best bullpen in the league last year, and I think that the numbers look very good. I think they did have the best ERA, but
First
we
half of
have
the year, for sure.
the first half of the year was a big factor in that. We looked into these numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I know in the second half of the year, the bullpen was much less productive than it was in the first half. And it was probably due to the workload that they had, because the rotation did not have consistency in it beyond Garrett Cole. And so to your point about the question marks beyond Garrett Cole, like, yeah, the bullpen is probably going to stand up and be pretty damn good through, call it May, June, maybe even July of this year. But if they are relied on for 3+ innings every single night because the rotation does not have consistency in health beyond Garrett Cole, that, in my opinion, is a huge miss in not adding to the rotation depth to help your bullpen sustain for the whole season. So having said all that, you're close to obviously a lot of rumors and stuff like that. Do you see something happening in spring training last minute? Because there's still some big pieces out there on the free agent market for pitching. Maybe in a last minute trade happens as teams start to play some games in spring training. Maybe injuries happen. Who the hell knows what happens? And on March 20th, something could happen.
Right. Well, I think thinking back to when Cashman spoke after the Stroman signing, and the Stroman signing itself is kind of like this is our last effort to pivot after Yamamoto. This is who's going to be the big addition in the rotation. They're giving him, almost $40 million for 2 years. That was my interpretation of it. But when Cashman was asked, are you now transitioning your focus away from the starting rotation? Not verbatim, but the sense that I got is, we're always exploring options to get better. And I don't know if the Yankees are going to be willing to give up what it'll take to get someone like a Dylan Cease or a Shane Bieber. But the way things are right now with the free agent market, but also other teams, I mean, there are some veteran pieces, not necessarily number ones or number twos, but I'm sure that there's an opportunity out there for them to get a bottom of the rotation guy that would, again, like I said earlier, ease the anxiety of maybe the organization. Again, I feel like they have faith in what they have, or at least that's what they've been telling us. And Boone will always say that, I asked him at the Pinstripe Pride autograph event the other weekend, like, how do you replace Wandy Peralta in the bullpen? And he was like, guys that you're not thinking about right now are going to have an impact. So clearly they know what they have. They made some other under the radar types of moves like Cody Morris, Cody Poteet, those types of guys. I mean, they have enough arms. It's just what's the quality? What's going to be the effectiveness? Can they rely on these guys? Like you said, the first half of the season kind of set the tone for the rest of the year, and the bullpen was definitely taxed. And when you have Tommy Kahnle, Jonathan Loizaga, those guys that have injury concerns in the past in their careers, you can't rely on them to pitch in 70 games the whole year and be lights out the whole time. So I think we're all on the same page. I mean, do I think they're going to trade for somebody? I wouldn't count on it, but they do have a surplus at certain positions. I mean, I look at catcher, for instance. I don't think Ben Rortvedt has an option, and it seems like Austin Wells is going to make the big league team, right? So maybe there's an avenue there. You bring in Luis Torrens as a non-roster guy, and you've got some other up-and-coming catchers. It doesn't seem like there's a spot for Rortvedt, but famous last words, right? I mean, people are going to get hurt over these next couple of weeks, and you need to have that depth. So I think the Yankees will be opportunistic. If something comes up that they're able to bring in another arm, just somebody that's been there before, I think they should pounce on it. I just don't know who that's going to be.
What about Blake Snell? Because there's still rumors. The Yankees maybe are just thrown into the Blake Snell rumors because the Yankees seem to be thrown into a lot of rumors. But, he's still out there on the free agent market, and we're starting spring training now.
Is his offer coming back down to earth, back down to the Yankees' range of feeling comfortable with him? Because that's an interesting one too. And it's not just a veteran depth guy. That's a guy that makes an impact that, pushes the rest of it, pushes Nestor Cortez into a number 5 role, which now we're talking like strength and depth, both at the same time. And to me, those are, that's a huge quality to have.
Right. A couple weeks ago, my coworker, Bob Clappish, reported that offer is off the table. I'm sure that's going to be a name that's discussed in terms of, the reporters that are down there asking questions to Garrett Cole. Does he want to have another ace on that staff? Cashman, are you done addressing the top of the rotation? I think it'll just come down to the financials there and what other teams are able to offer. All of the big name free agents that are still available are all Scott Boras clients, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, he has a stronghold on the market right now. Are any of those guys going to take a 1 or 2 year deal to kind of reset? I don't think Snell should do that. He just won a Cy Young, his second of his career.
It would be
So,
crazy if he did. Yeah.
right. And is there another team that's going to, back up the truck and suddenly offer a huge deal to convince those guys that they're going to be a contender, maybe one of those wild card teams? I don't know if like the Giants are done now that they got Soler, the Phillies. I don't know. But there are teams out there that could certainly use a Blake Snell or a Jordan Montgomery. The Yankees are one of them, but I don't know, based on their activity over these last couple of months, if that fits their budget. But like you were talking about earlier, I mean, you got to go all in, right? So if it's affordable with what they deem Snell is worth, then maybe you just go for it and you hope that he doesn't regress, because then it becomes a Rodon situation, worst case scenario, and that's not what you want.
Yeah, it's funny to call Blake Snell another rotation question mark because he's a 2-time Cy Young winner, but I feel like even though I would welcome adding Snell to the rotation, he would still be like a bit of a question mark, which is crazy to say. I know it's happened before. Teams have given big long-term contracts to guys even after spring training starts, even after the season starts. We saw Craig Kimbrell with the Cubs when he signed there. But I just feel like if you're going to sign a pitcher to 6, 7, 8 years, like you would have done that already in December or January. And now that spring training is starting and pitchers and catchers are in your camp, I would be surprised if that happens. So I'm not ruling out a short-term deal for Blake Snell.
At least one of those options, right? What was Boras calling the kettle pot, the something pot?
Scott Boras will trademark a new term for whatever Blake Snell signs for.
Some type of an option that gives him flexibility. Whereas if he comes out, and has another solid year, puts up the innings, because I think that's probably the biggest question mark with him, puts up the innings, has the ability to flex that into a longer term deal. Wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. And if that is the case, the Yankees should 100% pounce on it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it depends on what the market is for pitching next offseason too.
We were looking at that, so we actually pulled that real quickly. The free agents for next offseason: Corbin Burns, obviously, Max Fried, Zach Wheeler, Walker Buehler, Shane Bieber, Max Scherzer. Like those are going to be the big names starting pitchers on the free agent market.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge risk for him, because if he has one of his bad years, then he's not going to get anything close to. It's like a Harrison Bader situation, right? Where when he came over to the Yankees and he had that playoff series, we were all talking about how much he's going to get in an extension, and they're going to keep him around for the rest of his career. And then you have an injury riddled and maybe a poor performance, and all of a sudden you're taking a smaller contract. But then again, like, look at what Frankie Montas got from the Reds, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, the money's out there.
Pitching's at a premium right now. You got to pay for it, whether they're healthy or not.
All right. I also want to talk about Dominguez, because is it just me, or is he ahead of schedule? Like, he reports he's playing catch, he's throwing, and he's looks healthy, and he's in camp. I was not expecting to hear that on February 14th.
Yeah, I don't know what his concrete schedule was. I mean, really, all we've heard from the Yankees is that he'll be back sometime this summer. But I think it was always an anticipation that he'd be, capable of contributing in a certain way this spring. I mean, he's not going to be out there, throwing to home plate from center field in a Grapefruit League game. That would be silly. But I could see him taking some at-bats, and I think that this is valuable time for him, right? Because he's still, not of legal drinking age, and he has 8 games of MLB experience under his belt. I mean, he has a lot of room to develop, even with how emphatic his debut was. And that's something to keep an eye on too. Like, the Yankees now have this surplus of outfielders. In a sense, when he's ready to come back, you've got to subtract somebody, or you're just keeping, Verdugo in a 4th outfielder spot, and Grisham is literally just a defensive replacement. And that's not a bad problem to have, because again, I think people will get injured at some point, and that's not me being cynical. That happens to every team, and it always will. Yep. Yeah. So is he back before the All-Star break? I don't know. I don't think they're going to rush him. I think that would be a mistake, quite frankly, because they do have a quality outfield right now. I mean, maybe if, knock on wood for the Yankees fans out there, if a Soto or a Judge goes down and misses time and Dominguez is like close, maybe you bring him back. But it wouldn't be the worst thing for him, I think, to get, an extended stretch in AAA once he's like 90% healthy, just to get his legs under him and get back to facing pitching like that every day. But I mean, that's an exciting thing for fans to look forward to, because if his debut is any indication, he's going to be around for a long time. And then you change the conversation to, okay, the baby bombers stuff didn't work out. Is the Dominguez, Volpe, Wells, Chase Hampton, that next wave, is that going to get it done? Because Judge and Cole aren't getting any younger, and that window is starting to close in terms of their prime. I mean, maybe not starting to close, but it's
no. I think that's
closer.
accurate. I think the window is closer to the end than it is the beginning. Let's just say that on the prime of those guys' careers. Like, that's why you have to win. If you're going to win a championship with Cole and Judge as your main contributors, that has to happen very soon. It's not going to happen when they're both 37 years old.
Right. You've got Spencer Jones coming too. So you think about it from the outfield specifically. I mean, do they want? I think they want Soto to come back. It would be silly not to just totally not consider bringing him back if you can fit that into your payroll. I mean, he's going to be a great fit. Dominican superstar. He's a generational talent. We don't even need to discuss that. I mean, it's obvious. But I mean, there's an outfield out there where it's Judge, Jones, and Dominguez. If those two young guys work out, the fact that they've not been trading them because of how highly touted and their potential, I mean, that's a pretty darn good outfield right there. But if there's a way to keep Soto in that mix too, as Judge gets older, I think he's going to need to DH more often, and you can't count on Stanton to be an outfielder, as much as I'm sure that we'll hear this spring that he's going to be, getting reps out there, and that'll be playing in the outfield a couple of times a week. But yeah, I mean, there are big picture questions here too. I mean, there's a lot to discuss this spring, which I think is exciting for the fan base, especially coming off of such a disastrous season. And there is an avenue to them being really successful this year. It's just, it comes down to so many different what ifs.
The Stanton piece too, you mentioning him as counting on him in the outfield. It's hard to count on him in any capacity. You don't know what you get. I think that we've been talking on this show about him. If you get something from him, okay, then it's gravy at this point, but you cannot expect it. And to the point of the Yankees not doing what they had the opportunity to do in the starting rotation to date, I think they did address that in the outfield with, we're not going to be rolling, the fourth and fifth guys out there from AAA on a daily basis. Like, when Dominguez does come back, you have Grisham as a fourth defensive outfielder, a guy that can come in and swipe some bags, potentially has some speed on the base path. Like that, to me, that's a great role for him. He's not the greatest offensive player. He is a plus defender, has tremendous speed. Like I like him as a guy off the bench, and they'll figure out how to rotate four guys in. They always do. I'm not concerned about that, but the fact that they did create that depth in the outfield, I think is a really important piece, because the other thing is like, how long do they want Judge roaming center field? So I think that's a piece, having Dominguez come back. I got June circled for him in my head. But
to Max's point, they don't need to rush it because of the depth
they don't need to rush it
in the outfield. And if they didn't add, say, Verdugo this winter, then it would be sort of like when is Dominguez coming back so we can have a complete outfield. Now, if guys underperform or guys get injured, maybe that conversation will still happen. But as it stands right now in the middle of February, they can slow play Dominguez, which I think at his age and the injury he's coming off of, and his inexperience even in AAA, like, is absolutely the right way to play his rehab.
Yeah, if they didn't acquire anybody else, it would be so much pressure,
right,
for him to not only,
he would be treated as the savior, and that's such an unfair thing to put on a kid coming back from Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
We
want him playing loose, coming into a team that's has a spot for him, but doesn't need that spot. He needs to be playing loose.
He's a center fielder, right? And he just had major elbow surgery, and he's 20, 21 years old. I mean, that's not something you want to rush someone back from and risk him trying to perform better right away and he does something and there's a setback or there are long-term implications of that. I mean, you don't want to put that into the universe for the kid because, everyone's rooting for him to fulfill the expectations that he has. But the bottom line with the outfield is you go from IKF, Jake Bowers, Willie McKinney, Willie Calhoun. I mixed that up.
I like Willie McKinney better.
I think it proves my point a little bit. And now you have Verdugo, Soto, Grisham, Dominguez coming back. I mean, it's Everson Pereira. Maybe he can bounce back from the year that he had, the month that he had. So the talent is there. I wouldn't be surprised if Spencer Jones finishes on a similar timeline to Dominguez and he's able to contribute by the end of the year. But I think the Yankees should hope that they don't need a Jones to come up by the end, right? That they can stow him away for another year in the minors to have him develop, because there's no room for a prospect to come up because of injuries. They don't need to have that youth movement where they give the unconditional playing time to guys like they did at the end of last year. You hope that everybody's humming at the end of the season. And I think it'll be a wild card spot because the Orioles are seemingly becoming a juggernaut here. Anything can happen. That's so many months away from now. But as long as they get into the playoffs, all you need these days is a ticket to the dance, and then anything can happen.
That's right.
Which is their mentality. Sometimes
maybe unfortunately that is their mentality.
Kind of pisses us off a little bit, to be honest.
All right, Max, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next week. I'm sure there'll be actually much more to talk about after we hear Boone and Cashman speak, and any other news items that come out over the next week. Thanks again.
Absolutely, guys. Talk to you again soon.